Okay guys, now that I've loosened the screws to hold the back retaining, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them out and I'm going to actually push them into a pattern that I've actually just done inside of this foam here. This is pretty much a simple build. I mean, cameras look more advanced than what they really are, but this screw orientation is probably the most important thing of this entire build. The reason being is if you put the screw in the wrong area, one screw will push through and it will actually crack the back of the shutter. Another screw will go in and it will actually stop the mechanism of the arm going through. So I mean, that'll have a very deleterious effect on it. So what you're going to do is after you do that, you're going to rock this housing off too as well. Set it to the side. Now this exposes the back area of the camera. For those guys who want to know how to reset the timing on an ECLAIR, this is what you're going to be doing right here. You're going to remove that L-shaped bracket. And these two helix cut gears, the very top one controls the timing. What you would do is you would unloosen this screw and this screw. You would move this away to turn or rotate your shutter, then move it back. Timing is a fine dance between having the pull down claw go in, pause or its dwell section, the shutter coming up, closing, and then the claw pulling it down. You don't want the film moving obviously when the shutter's open because you'll get like that watery effect or that blurred effect and stuff like that. So pretty much it. So we're ready to actually flip the camera body over and take a look at the actual shutter part. This is what it looks like. You want to take your body now, and I'm gonna stop for 1 second and show you that bloop light bulb we're talking about. That's the light bulb right there from the factory. The wires go down and it comes to it. I would just disconnect it. Earlier I said gaffer's tape. Electric tape would be the best to put on there, but disconnect that unless you're just specifically using that light to mark your film. Other than that, you can take the body and sit it to the side right here. Now, this gets kind of messy, so if I was you, I'd get a rag together. I'm going to walk over a few of the parts of the camera mechanism. This right here obviously is the shutter, and I'm here today to replace that. This is your optical viewfinder. The viewfinding comes in this way and looks downward. Don't want to touch this at all if you can. Now we are going to have to remove this to get to the shutter. Unfortunately, you can't pull the shutter without removing that. This right here to the right is your actual pull down claw, and you can see it's very, very looped with a heavy, smelly kind of oil like a transmission from the factory. This bar right here is made out of plastic. This is one of the ECLAIR's Achilles heel if it has one. This bar wears out and it gets slop in it, and you can actually move this back and forth, the ball inside thing. You can remake that, but it's very, very difficult. It's one of those things, try to look around, find one brand new if you can. If not, just live with the fact that there's going to be some slop in your mirror. If you can find one of those new, your camera will be extremely quiet. At this point, I'm going to tell you, most of the ECLAIRs that I come across that have noise issues are generally because this shutter is scraping against the body. If your ECLAIR sounds like a machine gun, like tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat, it's not in the motor. 99% of the time, it's actually in the shutter system. It could have been where someone was trying to clean the gate and press the shutter, and it's grinding up against the back of the viewfinder, or even worse, behind your reflex view mirror, too, as well. If you cure that 90% of the time, it'll solve that problem. But what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to rotate the camera over with this screw right here, and you'll actually be able to see the whole mechanism as it works. This right here swings to one side. Your shutter comes around, and it goes back into the same movement again, too, as well. Your motor would be connected to that little black damper unit right there. And if I swing it over, it's kind of messy here. If I swing it over, you can actually see the pull-down claw working, too, as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to replace the shutter. Reason being, it looks like over the years somebody tried to repair this shutter here. Maybe it was damaged or started with something in the gate, and it has some kind of buildup on it, and it's actually making the machine gun noise is what we were talking about. So we're going to leave the shutter at an angle like that for a second. I'm just going to wipe my hands. I have grease all over them. And the very next thing you do now is you're going to release these two bolts right here. Be very gentle with them. Sometimes from the factory they have a Loctite type of compound on them. So I'm going to turn this way. I'm actually going to rotate the mirror out of my way so I don't slip. There you go. Slip. Okay. Okay, releasing one of the screws. Now, anytime you have to replace a shutter, you have to retime the camera. It would be very, very hard to just drop a shutter in and go shooting right away because they're adjusted at the factory. Okay, you're going to remove these two screws. Fortunately, these weren't that hard to get out. Sometimes I've had where you have to really, really work to get those out. Now the shutter is loose. It's a bottle cap fit, so it won't fall off. You're actually going to have to use a little bit of persuasion to get it. I want to stop and talk to you something I think that's just as important as these screws. It's removing your viewfinder. Before you remove this, before you even think about touching it, I would take a scribe or some kind of sharp instrument and I would grind a marking from the body to the viewfinder itself. That'll help you realign it. Now, from the factory, guys, there was actually a device that you could put this in and clamp it to the side and it would center your optical path. We don't have that tool. If someone out there has it and they want to sell it, definitely drop me a line. I would love to do it. I rebuild quite a few of these. Another good way to do it is if you have just a bottle of fingernail polish, I would mark it on the side there and also on the top. That'll give you a good reference of where you need to put that unit back in. This unit, once the three screws are loosened, it'll rotate slightly in all directions. So you want to make sure you got that right, you know. Now, another way of adjusting this is you can actually leave them kind of loose, put the camera back together, and on the inside of the camera, after it's put together, there's actually a small screw hole right there. It's actually designed as an adjusting port for that unit. You can look through the viewfinder and move this up and down and center your unit at the same time. Now, the three screws that remove this one, and this one, are actually on the front of the camera. Now, before you do this, I would recommend you to take some type of tape, cover your gate. Last thing you need is while you're trying to get one of these screws out for your screwdriver to slip and just scratch down your gate. You know, the game's over at that point. Obtaining a gate for one of these is, you know, it's very difficult. So I'm going to stop at this point. I'm going to put some tape over that, and I'm going to go back to loosening those, and we're going to pull the shutter on this puppy.